Compared to me, he's quite young. So we have a lot of wisdom here, and he's got some of his own to share with us. Benjamin Jealous, who, as you know, I'm sure you all know who he is, former head of the NAACP 2008 to 2012. He's been involved in many things, national television shows, interviewed, well, I don't know how many times. We are very lucky to have him come here today, and he asked to come speak to us. I'm very honored that he did. And with that, I introduce Benjamin Jealous.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
It's good to be here. Thank you for your hospitality. Let me join your meeting. I hope tonight we can have a conversation. Some of you may know I'm on a journey right now. We're in the midst of an exploratory committee, trying to to figure out whether we can actually put this campaign for governor together. It's a real joy to be here tonight. I spend my days these days investigating in social impact companies, double bottom line companies. Our flagship company was co-founded by a graduate of Morgan State University. It's cut the cost of calling home from prison for inmates in the federal system by 80%. We have another company started by a Baltimore teacher that's made it possible, much easier for principals to manage the finances of their schools. And to ensure that the budget says that they have books, that they're going to have books. The budget says that they're going to have paper in the copy room, there's paper in the copy room. Using budget management to drive performance. But I look forward to coming to meetings like these because this is how I got started in life. I started out as a 14-year-old precinct captain in my local Democratic Party. My grandma was one of those women who, when you walked in the front door, she had a picture of Jesus and a picture of JFK. And a picture of Martin Luther King right next to it. And as a young man born in the 70s, after that age of martyrs, all of those, JFK, MLK, and RFK, and so many others, I was proud to be a Democrat, and I was proud when I got started. I got started in Jesse Jackson's 1988 campaign, and Michael Dukakis' campaign that followed. And in those times, we took great pride in being the party, not just of JFK and LBJ and RFK and MLK, but Barbara Mikulski, Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Sherrod too. Reverend Charles Sherrod as well. My mom and he took part in protests together when they were young. Byron Rustin. And something changed in our party. In that 88 campaign, I remember being a young man, being so excited, seeing iron workers chanting, "Run, Jesse, run," shipyards down south. In a sense that our party really was holding on to its mission to finally end poverty in this country. But it seems like over the last 20 years or so, folks have gotten comfortable as the party of all these great acronyms, transformative leaders, first woman in the U.S. Senate, and so forth. Barbara Mikulski was my grandmother's office mate's intern. My grandmother was a 100-year-old retired Baltimore social worker. And as my grandma would say, it's easy when you're a Democrat to talk about civil rights. It's harder these days, it seems, as a Democrat to really lead around ending poverty, to really lead around expanding opportunity. And I kind of fell in love with the possibilities for our state as head of the NAACP in 2012. I've been in the job for 4 years, going into my 5th year. I would step down after about 5.5 years. Those are dog years, and when you're raising young children, I'll die on my son. He was born July 4th, 2012. Right in the middle of an NAACP convention. He barely saw his father until December of that year. I was all around the country fighting voter suppression, and helping to put 1.2 million new voters into the field, help make sure that President Obama stayed President Obama. And that year here in Maryland was a big year for civil rights. We had a bunch of young people who made it clear to our party's leaders that when they said that we needed that year to abolish the death penalty, pass marriage equality, pass the DREAM Act, expand voting rights, pass sensible gun safety, that we needed to do all of that. And the wise old men in our party, and they tend to be old men, ones that I'm talking about, said, please don't do all of that. But can't you all just like pick a number and get in line? We'll take one of those this year. And the young folks in our party said, explain that math to me. Because I understand how it adds up when we're fighting for everybody's rights. But I can also see how it subtracts, how it demobilizes, how it demotivates if we keep telling other groups to stand in line. And by the way, for some of those groups, that line never ends. Every year seems like it ain't the right year. How long have we been trying to pass the ERA, for instance? But that year, when they were suppressing voting rights to the south of us and the north of us, in Virginia and Pennsylvania too, we tried something different here in Maryland. We said all for one, and one for all. And we abolished the death penalty, first state south of the Mason-Dixon Revolution. And we passed marriage equality. And I got to say, you know, when I rolled out the NAACP's endorsement of that, I started to tear up a bit. My parents' marriage had been against the law in 1966. I know the special hell that is visited upon children when society thinks that their parents' marriage is a scandal. No matter how your church feels about it, your synagogue feels about it, your temple, your mosque feels about it, understand that year when we passed marriage equality, we liberated a bunch of our state's children from being bullied for no reason other than who their parents loved. And that's not a reason. But we also have the courage. I'm somebody who grew up shooting guns. Frankly, I shot pretty much everything in the sheriff's shooting range. My friend's best dad was a Green Beret from a .22 to an AK-47 before I was 12. I know how to handle them safely. I can hit most anything at about 100 yards. But I also know that there's a lot of responsibility that comes with gun ownership. And I was proud of our state that year, and so many other states should have done so much more to take things like AK-47s out of the hands of people who have no business owning them, if only because they're mentally ill. That our state moved forward, and our state passed the DREAM Act, and our state expanded voting rights when everybody else was suppressing it. And that took a lot of courage. And yet right now, some of the most progressive jurisdictions in our state stand against the $15 minimum wage. And my thing is, like, if you're against that, what are you for? Are you for parents working 60, 80 hours a week? I have an uncle who works at the Horseshoe Casino in Baltimore. He's 80 years old. His pension was wiped out by the recession. He's always the optimist because we're tough. Quite frankly, you know, he knows that his great-grandparents were slaves, and he has a lot to be thankful for. And so I say, how's it going? He says, well, you know, it's going pretty good. I'm like, yeah, you're 80 years old, you're working as a dishwasher. Why are you saying that it's going pretty good? He said, well, I take less of my diabetes medication now, because I burn up so much sugar watching the dishes. Find a silver lining on any cloud. tonight, guys, and I'm dug in deep. We're anticipating launching this campaign. Because I believe that it's actually possible for us as Democrats to get back to being Democrats. I don't come from the Republican wing of the Democratic Party. I come from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. And I don't believe it's an improvement to replace a lightweight Republican with Republican money. But I know what it takes. Because my family, my mom's family, has lived within, say, 100 miles of the Chesapeake Bay for like 400 years or so. Found out through Henry Louis Gates Jr. that we descend from Thomas Jefferson's grandmother through his cousins who practiced the Jeffersonian model of child rearing in the 18th century. It's quite common in our region for black guys to be as light as me. I'm darker than my black grandmother. Just leave it at that. But what I can say is that in this region, for those of us whose families go back a long way, we know that the holy grail of politics in our region is to get people, regardless of color, to sit on the same side of the table staring at all those problems that we have in common, rather than sitting across from each other, picking at each other while those problems just get bigger and bigger. And I gotta tell you, I saw something when I was traveling around the country with Bernie. And I would go on to do everything I could in the general to help Hillary. I was the first of the surrogates to endorse her. I endorsed her at MSNBC, I endorsed her on the stage of the DNC. But my heart was in the Bernie campaign, and I was traveling with him, and we had a really good showing up in Michigan. And we were on to Missouri next. And before that, we had been in Chicago, pretty good showing there too. And so in my mind, that day, we left Chicago, we'd gone to Detroit, and now we're on to St. Louis. But the plane stops in the Ozarks. And as a black guy who's lived in Mississippi, as president of NAACP, went to a lot of places, politics like Mississippi, I had never been to the Ozarks. And that was okay with me. And so we land there, and we roll over to Southwest Missouri State University, and you know, it feels a bit like Detroit as much as we're turning away 7,000 people out the door and there's 5,000 people inside. That's about where it ended as far as feeling like Detroit. And we get backstage, and I look out through the curtains, and the greatest diversity I see in this room is that 20% of the crowd is in deer hunting camouflage. It doesn't look like Detroit, sure ain't Chicago. And I lean back. It's occurred to me I should ask at this point. I said, who was introducing Bernie tonight? He said, well, you are, Ben. I said, are you sure of that? Really, are you sure? We don't know somebody better? They said, Ben, we think this is your kind of crowd too. I said, all right, we'll find out. And I went out there and I gave my speech, which was primarily about the dangers of Donald Trump. And it was responded to just the way it was in Chicago and Detroit. I thought that was pretty